The sun dipped low over Dusty Gulch, painting the evening sky with crimson streaks. A stagecoach door creaked open, and Clara Worthington stepped down, her silk dress out of place among the rough-hewn boardwalks and dust-caked boots. In her hand, she clutched a yellowed letter, her late uncle's promise of a fortune, hidden somewhere in Coyote Canyon. The map was vague, the trail dangerous, but Clara's determination outshone the fear lingering in her wide city eyes. Whispers guided her steps to the saloon, a dim room thick with cigar smoke and suspicion. All chatter seemed to bend around one figure at the bar. He was massive Thomas, the cowboy locals called a giant, his head nearly brushing the rafter's shoulders, broad as a barn door. He sipped whiskey in silence, while townsfolk kept their distance, as if his size alone demanded respect. Clara's heels clicked across the floorboards. Against every doubtful stare, she lifted her chin and met his gaze. "You're Thomas Boone," she asked, voice steady, despite the tremor beneath. He gave a slow nod, faint amusement in his gray eyes. "I need a guide to Coyote Canyon," she declared, unfolding the map between them. "It's dangerous," he rumbled, warning more than mocking. Her lips curved into a smirk, though her heart thundered. "Danger is my middle name." Thomas chuckled, a sound like rolling thunder. Too big a job for a city gal. Clara leaned closer, whispering words that sealed their fate. "Too big for me? But I'll try." At first light, the stable at Dusty Gulch stirred with the smell of hay and the shuffle of hooves. Clara appeared transformed. Gone was the silk dress that had drawn every stare in town. In its place were borrowed trousers and a plain shirt, still a little too fine for the trail, but practical enough to ride. Thomas already saddling his towering horse, Blaze watched her approach with a trace of approval hidden behind his calm expression. She struggled with the pony assigned to her, the animal far less cooperative than Blaze. When she fumbled with the reins, Thomas's hand reached out, huge, steady, reassuring. He lifted her into the saddle as though she weighed nothing at all. "Hold tight," he murmured, his grin softening the rough edges of his warning. Her nerves eased just slightly under his guidance. The canyon lay ahead, its dark ridges cutting against the morning sun. The trail turned rocky wheels of loose stone rolling beneath hooves. Clara bounced unsteadily, her polished city grace peeling away with each jolt. Dust smeared across her cheek. Thomas rode ahead, his silhouette vast against the rising cliffs, before calling back, "Why Coyote Canyon?" Clara hesitated, then confessed the chest of gold promised by her uncle's letter. His eyes narrowed with a mix of caution and disbelief. Plenty tried, none came back. As if to test her resolve, Clara's pony stumbled. She cried out, slipping sideways, but before the ground could claim her, Thomas was there. His arms caught her like iron, firm and unyielding. For one suspended moment, the danger of the canyon faded into something else. An unexpected closeness neither had sought, but both felt. The canyon swallowed daylight quickly, leaving only the glow of a small fire between them. Sparks rose into the night as Clara unfolded her uncle's weathered letter, the ink faint but the words steady. She read aloud the riddle scrawled at the bottom. "The treasure is guarded where shadows dance, and the heart lies still." Thomas leaned back, the brim of his hat tilting low, firelight flickering across his weathered jaw. "Riddles ain't my strength," he admitted, voice rumbling like distant thunder. "But I know this land. Every bend, every cave." His gaze was steady, promising a kind of guidance no map could give. Clara studied him, struck by the contrast this giant of a man feared in town for his size, speaking quietly by a crackling fire, as though the wilderness itself bent to his will. Gathering courage, she asked the question that had pressed at her since dawn. "Why help me? You don't owe me anything." Thomas shrugged, eyes reflecting the flames. "Something about you," he said simply, "makes me curious." Her cheeks warmed, though the night was cool. For the first time since stepping into Dusty Gulch, Clara felt the iron wall of her defenses shift just slightly under his calm, unspoken interest. By dawn's edge, the canyon grew narrower, its walls pressing close until even Clara's voice seemed swallowed by stone. She rode behind Thomas, her eyes tracing the way his massive frame moved with surprising ease. Steady hands guiding Blaze, gentle enough to soothe the restless horse, yet strong enough to split wood in a single swing. The contradiction unsettled her strength wrapped in patience. "Were you always this big?" she teased, half to lighten her nerves. A grin cracked across his face. "Born big. Stayed big." She laughed, the sound easing the canyon's weight, but her amusement faded when a distant howl echoed off the rocks. Wolves. Thomas's hand went immediately to the pistol at his hip, his body taut, protective. Clara's pulse jumped, though not only from the danger, there was something about the way he stood ready, as if shielding her was instinct, not choice. The trail narrowed to a single line, forcing them to dismount. Clara stumbled on loose gravel, and Thomas's steady grip caught her again. His touch lingered just long enough to steal her breath before he released her. By midday, they reached a cave carved with strange symbols, shadows flickering like dancers in the dim light. Clara held the worn map tight, her chest fluttering. She glanced up at Thomas, whose broad silhouette filled the cave's mouth, and whispered the same vow she'd spoken when they met. "Too big for me, but I'll try." With squared shoulders, she stepped inside. The cave swallowed their footsteps, each echo chasing them deeper into the dim. Cracks in the ceiling spilled thin shafts of light enough to paint shifting shadows across the walls. Clara's gaze caught the strange carvings, spirals, arrows, and a heart-shaped symbol etched at eye level. Her uncle's riddle echoed in her mind. Where shadows dance, the heart lies still. She pressed trembling fingers to the mark. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground rumbled, dust sifting from the ceiling. A massive slab of stone slid aside with a grinding roar, revealing a chamber beyond. Golden glimmers spilled through the gap. Thomas let out a low whistle. "Smart city gal," he said, half teasing, half in awe. Clara's cheeks warmed, but the moment was cut short by a guttural growl rolling out of the dark. From the shadows stepped a wolf larger than any Clara had ever imagined, its coat black as coal eyes burning amber. It bared its teeth, guarding the treasure as if sworn by blood. Clara froze, clutching the map to her chest. "Thomas." But he was already moving. "Stay back," he ordered, voice steady as bedrock. The beast lunged, and the giant cowboy met it head-on. The cave erupted in chaos, snarls, the scrape of boots, the thud of muscle against stone. Thomas wrestled the wolf, his arms straining with raw power, his face set with grim focus. Clara grabbed a rock-hard hammering, but his voice cut through. "Don't! I've got it!" With one last heave, Thomas pinned the animal to the ground. The wolf whimpered, then bolted into the dark shadows, swallowing it whole. Panting, Thomas turned back, his shirt, torn sweat streaking his brow. "You all right?" Clara could only nod, breathless. Strength wasn't frightening in him, it was protection. The growls faded, leaving only the sound of Clara's breath, and Thomas's steady heartbeat still ringing in her ears. Together they stepped into the chamber. At the center, resting on a stone pedestal, gleamed a weathered chest. Clara's hands shook as she pressed the latch. With a groan, the lid swung open, spilling gold coins and jewels into the dim light. Riches beyond imagination glittered before her, but her eyes strayed from the treasure to the man beside her. Thomas, still catching his breath from the fight, looked down at her with a half smile. "We did it," he murmured. Clara laughed softly, the sound echoing against the cave walls. The gold sparkled, yet it felt strangely unimportant. What held her attention was the rugged cowboy who had stood between her and death itself. As they turned to leave, Clara stumbled over a loose stone. Strong arms caught her, instantly drawing her against the solid wall of his chest. Thomas raised a brow, his voice low with playful warmth. "You've got to stop falling into me." Her cheeks burned, but she found her courage. "Maybe I can't help it." She whispered the words, slipping out like a secret she had carried too long. His eyes softened at that something unspoken sparking between them. For a moment, the treasure behind them ceased to matter. On the trail back, the air between them shifted. Their silence no longer carried distance, but a new ease. Clara rode closer, their shoulders almost brushing. Banter replaced guarded words, laughter replacing hesitation. The canyon had given them gold, yes, but it had also unearthed something rarer. Something that glowed brighter than coins. By the time the canyon faded behind them, the weight of the chest strapped to Blaze seemed lighter than the unspoken thoughts between them. Thomas broke the silence first, his deep voice steady. "What'll you do with all that gold?" Clara tilted her head, pretending to think, though her answer was already formed. "Maybe buy a ranch," she said with a sly smile. "And I might need a partner." Her words hung in the air, half a jest, half an invitation. When they rode back into Dusty Gulch, eyes followed them as always. Whispers chased her steps about the city woman and the giant cowboy. Clara ignored the stares this time. At the saloon, they shared a meal with the chest locked away upstairs. She lifted her glass voice low but bold. "You know, Thomas, you're not too big for me to handle." His surprised laugh filled the room, not mocking, but warm. For once, she felt proud of her daring. Days later, Clara signed papers for a small ranch on the edge of town. The silk dresses were long gone. She wore denim now, boots scuffed from honest work. Thomas was there, hammer in hand, his broad frame bent over new fencing. She stood beside him, her palms raw, her smile unshaken. As the sun sank behind the ridge, she whispered again, almost to herself, "Too big for me, but I'm trying." Thomas glanced her way, his grin slow and sure, as if to say, trying was enough. The ranch grew out of more than timber and sweat, it grew out of moments that stitched two lives together. Their first kiss came not in triumph, but in stillness beneath a sky freckled with stars. Clara leaned against the porch rail, the night air cool against her cheeks. "I thought I came chasing gold," she murmured, eyes finding Thomas's. "But I found something far more valuable." His massive frame bent slightly toward her, gentle as a whisper. Their lips met steady, certain, and for Clara, the wild no longer felt foreign. It felt like home. By day, that home echoed with laughter. Clara, once draped in silk, now gripped reins with calloused hands. Her posture wobbled her pony, weaving awkwardly across the pasture. Heels down, Thomas called, riding beside her with a patience born from the land itself. When she finally found her rhythm and galloped freely across the open field, her laughter spilled louder than the wind. Thomas watched, a rare grin breaking across his face. "Natural," he said. She shot back, breathless, "Had a good teacher." The wild tested them again one storm-thick evening. Lightning slashed the sky, thunder rolled like a cannon, and rain poured down in sheets. Horses shrieked and kicked inside the corral. Clara slipped in the mud arms, scrambling for a rope, but Thomas's giant hand pulled her upright. Soaked to the skin hair plastered to her face, she met his gaze, and this time neither hesitated. Their kiss was fierce, alive with rain and resolve. In that storm, Clara realized love here was not fragile or polished. It was forged in mud, laughter, and shared burdens. A love vast as the prairie, rooted as deep as the canyon walls, and strong enough to weather whatever came next. Word of the treasure spread like fire on dry grass, and soon trouble came riding into Dusty Gulch. A bandit gang thundered into town, their eyes sharp with greed, their voices demanding gold that wasn't theirs. Clara stood her ground, the map still tucked in her bodice, her jaw set like stone. But it was Thomas who stepped forward, towering over them, his shadow swallowing the firelight. Hand resting heavy on his pistol, his voice rolled low and steady. "It's ours. Leave." The outlaws sneered, but none dared test him. One by one, they backed away, their bravado shrinking under the weight of his presence. When the last hoofbeats faded, the saloon erupted in cheers. Music struck up, fiddles quick and joyful. Clara found herself swept into Thomas's arms on the dance floor. Her silk was long gone, replaced by denim. Yet in that moment, she felt more radiant than any ballroom ever allowed her to be. The townsfolk clapped in rhythm, calling them the canyon's heroes. Thomas spun her once, his grin wide, her laughter spilling bright. Around them, Dusty Gulch no longer whispered about a city gal and a giant cowboy. They celebrated them as partners, as protectors, as belonging. The months that followed turned Dusty Gulch into something brighter than Clara had ever imagined. The ranch thrived, cattle grazing under skies that seemed wider now that she no longer carried her burdens alone. She often looked at the chest of gold hidden away in their home, but with every passing day its glitter lost importance. The true treasure was Thomas, the steady arms that caught her when she stumbled, the quiet laugh that rolled like thunder, but soothed like rain. The town too shared in the bounty. Clara and Thomas chose not to hoard their wealth. Instead, they gave portions of it to rebuild the town school and fund a small clinic. Children raced across new steps carved from sturdy wood, and families sought care without fear of cost. In every board nailed and every wall painted, Dusty Gulch grew stronger, stitched together by the generosity of the two once deemed misfits, a city woman chasing a map, and a cowboy thought too large for the world around him. Together they became a living legend, not because of gold, but because of the life they built with it. One evening the sun bled orange across the horizon as they sat on the porch. Clara's head resting against Thomas's chest. She smiled, her voice teasing but tender. Too big for me. Thomas's lips brushed her hair, his reply steady and sure. Maybe, but you'll always win. The wind carried their laughter into the night across the fields and into the town that no longer whispered doubts. Under those endless western stars, gold was just metal, but their love, sprawling, fierce, and true, was worth more than any treasure the canyon could hide. From the first dusty step Clara took off that stagecoach to the final quiet evening on the porch, this story was never just about gold. It began as a treasure hunt, a city woman clutching a letter, and a giant cowboy reluctant to guide her. Yet what they found went far beyond coins and maps. In every stumble, where Thomas's steady hands caught her, in every firelit glance, where Clara's boldness met his calm, the canyon carved something new. A family, a partnership, a belonging that no vault of riches could replace. The gold-funded fences, schools, and a clinic, yes. But the true legacy was a love too vast to measure, built on courage, laughter, and the simple vow to keep trying, no matter how impossible things seemed. Clara discovered that the fortune she sought was not buried in stone, but standing right beside her. And Thomas, once alone in his sighs and silence, learned that some hearts are never too small to hold him. If tales like this stir something in you, the grit of the frontier, the tenderness hidden in its hardest places, then stay with us. More Wild West love stories ride these trails, and the next legend may be waiting just around the bend.